So we here at Lon'qudor, yeah, I'm going to assume you know the intro by now. So this is part 5 of this inevitably continuing series, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. Currently, as I speak, we are at almost 300 weapon submissions. Wow. The whole reason I started this challenge to begin with was that I was frustrated that my voice was never being heard by anyone. And the whole reason I started this series to begin with is that so anyone else could relieve their frustrations that their voice is never being heard. But I never counted on this many people being angry that their voices would never be heard. Anyway, as you can probably tell, this video is going to be a long one, as we've had so many submissions that these videos are going to have to get longer and longer, and I'm going to have to try to cover as many as I can. The only other thing I'm going to say is that recently we've started doing the weekly challenge, where every time I post one of these videos, for the next run we will be accepting only 2 days worth of submissions towards the weekly challenge. Last week's weekly challenge was to design a crossbow from the sniper as a primary, and when I set this idea I had a secret criteria in mind for what I'd like to see, but didn't tell anyone, and sure enough, someone delivered. User Iron Soil in our Discord server designed a fantastically unique crossbow. You see, what I was really looking for with this challenge is that someone could design a crossbow which could be charged and holstered, much like the crossbows in Minecraft or Elden Ring, and Iron Soil took a pretty unique take to this. Each charge had different levels of damage and accuracy, yet they can all be stored independently. And the downsides seem pretty fair to me. So, well done Iron Soil, you get your rank displayed differently from everyone else on the server. Whether that actually matters to you or not, I don't know, but oh well. And for this week's weekly challenge, we're looking for someone to design a primary for the medic that's more focused on offense. Something with maybe a higher damage output or a faster firing rate, but maybe some other negative stats towards healing. As of this video going up, you have a total of 2 days to get your submissions in before I take the winner. But well done everyone, I'm absolutely enthralled by the amount of support this series has got, but then at the same time, maybe slow down if you can. Okay, intro over, let's just actually start to cover them. Okay, well the first one we have today is called the Peacebreaker, and this is a revolver for the spy. So consider this the Dragon's Fury of spy revolvers. This thing is perfectly accurate and mini crits upon headshots. This comes at the cost of only reloading one bullet at a time and having a 20% longer attack interval between missed shots, much like the Dragon's Fury does. I've got to be honest with you, I really like this idea. Consider this weapon like a back burner, it's like an intermediate way in between the Ambassador and the stock revolver. And you know, I don't think that's a bad design for a weapon. I think this thing sounds pretty cool. First mental thoughts that it's maybe a little too strong, but you have to remember that it does have slower shots in between missed intervals and only reloads one bullet at a time. So I've talked myself into this thing being pretty good. So, the Peacebreaker. I really like it. I'm putting it in balanced. Maybe it's a bit too strong, I'm not too sure, but I think this is a fantastic idea for a weapon. Next on our ever-lengthening list is the anti-aircraft minigun. So the reserve shooter of miniguns assisting mini-crits upon airborne enemies, yet mini-crits turn into explosions? I'm going to assume this means the explosions have an area of effect, kind of, you know, effect. This anti-Trojan terrorizer comes at the cost of having only 100 ammo and a 25% slower movement speed while revved up. So I'm not entirely sure how to feel about this one. On one hand, I really like the idea of giving every class reserve shooter, so much to the fact where that's going to be the next Making It All class video. Yet, at the same time, bullets becoming explosives and having air effect while in the air sounds a bit strong, but also a bit weak at the same time. As in, usually while you're airborne, you're not going to be encountering anyone else. As, you know, you're in the air. Unless you're huddled to someone else or you're jumping with a quick fix medic, it's usually going to be you by yourself. So that's not the most powerful thing in the world, even though it sounds like it might be. And really what I want to look at is the downsides here. Having only 100 ammo and not having firing speed penalty is actually quite a big downside. And the 25% slower movement while revved up is nowhere near as bad as you think. It's bad, obviously, but it's nowhere near as bad as something like the Brass Beast. So while what this weapon's trying to do might sound clear on paper, in practice I'm a bit confused as to what it's really trying to excel at. If it was simply an anti-air device, it would have a tighter accuracy spread, but then again, having less ammo is a downside, and the explosives, I'm not too sure. So I really like the idea of this thing. I like the idea of reserve shoot for all classes. However, I'm just very confused as to why the downsides are there. A bit like the Hulong heater, the downsides are completely negligible when stuck to the cart or near a dispenser. So if we're thinking how this thing could truly be broken, I think maybe we put it in a bit too good. Purely because the fire rate of a normal heavy That at mini crits, even on airborne targets, is insanely strong and probably needs a harsher downside. The bank breaker is a fantastically unique concept and something we're desperately lacking in the world of spies, a new, unintuitive way to use the sapper. The text on this may seem a bit not reading all that at first, but let me basically explain that this sapper has a dedicated time limit of 5 seconds. After 5 seconds it will explode, dealing an area of effect damage. This destruction can hurt the engineer, the enemy team, you as the spy, and other buildings. One of the major downsides to this is that the buildings are still operating while being sapped. And I'm going to assume as well another sapper cannot be placed until this thing has been destroyed. What a fantastically unique concept for a sapper. I know I've been calling it a sapper this whole time when the image is quite literally just a stick of dynamite, but... Anyway, I love the idea of this thing. Whether it could be removed or not would either make this incredibly powerful or rather weak. I'm going to assume it can be removed, as it wasn't stated otherwise. But I really like the idea that the buildings are still operational and after a certain time limit they will just blow up, dealing AoE damage. That's a really cool idea. But apart from that, how strong this thing would be in reality when the engineer could just simply remove them, or a Pybro could remove it in one hit, I'm unsure. This thing would be incredibly useful when placing on dispensers, as when the team huddles around them you could blow them up and essentially get loads of kills. But apart from that, I generally don't know how strong this thing would play out in reality. We'd have to see. I still don't know how I feel about this one. Put it this way, I want it in the game 100%, and balanced is generally what that tier is. However, I'm actually going to put this in a bit too weak, purely because a 5-second time limit with no damage dealt whatsoever. You know, the engineer could easily just remove it, or if he's dead, a pyro can come along. This thing would utterly thrive on teams with no pyros and just dead engineers. But at the same time, while I think this is a fantastic concept and I think it should be added into the game as is, I am going to put it in a bit too weak. I love it though, 100%, my favourite of the entire video. This is one of the funniest and most unique designs I've ever seen for a weapon. It is quite literally just a brick. This is a throwable secondary for the scout in case that wasn't obvious, and it has a recharge rate of 4 seconds. While throwing this thing you can hold down the mouse and charge up from 40 base damage to 100 base damage. And bricks can even be picked up once they have been thrown. There have been a lot of good ideas today. But funny enough, all these ideas are very old ones. Most of these ideas are 2-3 weeks old at most. As generally, the newer submissions we get aren't as good as these. Anyway, I love the concept of this. The only change I'd make is that a one brick can only be thrown twice before it shatters upon impact. So, you know, just so you can't infinitely farm bricks at close range. But apart from that, I really like the idea of this. This is great fun. I love bricks and bricks love me. I get bricks and they make me happy. Wow, 8 minutes in and we've only covered like 4 weapons. Well, we're going to start to speed these along a bit, but the submissions today have been really good, so I've had a lot to say about them. Anyway, the Char Bomber is a very unique kind of flare gun. It has a humongous splash radius, a 25% bullet damage resistance on wearer, and a 40% longer afterburn duration. This comes at the cost of 50% less afterburn damage and no critical hits upon burning players. Now, I'm just going to say what we're all thinking. We do not need another Scorch Shot. It's widely agreed upon that the Phlogistinator itself isn't overpowered, but much rather the Scorch Shot combined with it is. And just imagine this thing combined with the Phlogistinator. The bullet resistance is a very weird trait here, and the 40% extra afterburn damage still means that on average it's going to be dealing less afterburn damage than, say, the Detonator or the stock flare gun. But really, this thing should probably never reach the game. Scorch Shot 2, Scorch Shot Go to Hell. Complete rework. The Dwight solution here is one of the most random weapon designs I think we've ever had. Guaranteed full-on critical hits, not mini crits, full-on critical hits on overhealed players and no random bullet spread. This means the shots always fire in a fixed pattern, a bit like the Panic Attack. Yet unlike the Panic Attack, this thing comes with 30% less bullets per shot and no random critical hits. Okay, where do I start this thing? First of all, why? Why the soldier? Why? This is a very random weapon design. And the reason I don't think it worked within TF2 is purely because it's not trying to do anything in particular. Yes, it's trying to overheal crit players, but then again, that's not really an issue we have. Every TF2 weapon should define to do something important, yet while this thing has a defined role of critting overhealed players, its downsides are negligible. So a very random idea, and for the soldier specifically, and honestly an idea like this could work in the game with some tweaking, but currently as is, I don't really see this being added. I guess I dunked on it a bit there, but the Dwight solution, I actually really like the idea of dealing extra damage to overhealed players. I like the idea of cutting down extra players' health and then maybe dealing less damage to them when they're below a certain threshold. If someone could design a shotgun that does that, that'd be really cool. But just currently as is, full-on critical hits and minuscule downsides need a complete rework. At this point, I should say I appreciate all those who try to submit weapons even though they're maybe not the best or familiar with the source material. That being said, the gas tanker is an excellent example of this. This is an air blast flamethrower through and through with a 50% less air blast cost. This comes at the penalty of 10% damage, 25% afterburn, no random critical hits, and mini crits when it would normally crit. This is quite literally just the most straightforward approach you could possibly take to an air blast flamethrower, a lot more simple than the ones I've come up with in the past. Cheaper air blast, less fire damage. Very simple concept, maybe not as effective in practice. As you see, the whole point of pyro is fire damage, so if you take that away, you're not really left with anything that strong. But I really do like the attempts to balance this weapon, including the mini crit stat, and well done to whoever submitted this. So, gas tanker, I'm not awfully too sure how I feel about this thing. I'm going to put it in a little too weak, just for now, as a 50% air blast cost, 50% decreased air blast cost, is nowhere near as strong enough as all those downsides weighed out to be. I've always wanted to see a classic hunting rifle in the game, the kind of pan, crit-crack sounding ones that we all love. Anyway, the hunting rifle here is as basic as it gets. No charge damage and minus 50% bullet range as these weapons normally do, yet you get base 100 damage and 100% extra more ammo. And also 25% health on wearer, which is a very interesting choice, but oh well. I will say that the no-scope on this thing sounds bad, however, whether this has a sightline at all, whether you can right-click with it to zoom in to an extent at all, would really make this good or bad. If it's just like the Huntsman with no zoom whatsoever, then this would essentially be sniping for babies, which I'd honestly quite like personally. I don't like playing sniper. But if you could at least right-click to aim down the sight of the barrel with no zoom effect, I think that would be a lot better. But apart from that, of all the weapons we've had today, this feels like something that should have been in the game from the base. Simple concept, simple design, but then again, some varying factors would either make this good or incredibly weak. Asking me how I feel about this thing, I'm not overly too sure. If there is no right click whatsoever, I'm going to put it in... Wow, I mean, you have the base 100 damage, but even so, a sniper rifle that can't snipe is a bit too weak. If you could zoom in to an extent, or at least right click, then maybe that would be good. But then again, headshots are great, but no fully charged heavy uber kill headshots. Yeah. And I'm officially out of TF2 footage. For how my videos usually work, I only record roughly about 6 to 8 minutes worth of footage per video, and as you can see, we're knocking on 30 minutes, and I've 100% ran out. One video normally takes around 20 games worth of footage, and I don't currently have time to record that as I haven't uploaded anything for about a day. Well, I hope you like various other random games, because that's what you're going to be getting for the next 20 minutes or so. Anyway, this next weapon is very clearly a joke, and I'm not going to read its name out loud as I do not swear. However, I just really wanted to explore the idea of this. This is a pistol for the scout, even though it looks like a revolver, and has a 50% faster firing rate and a 90% damage penalty. This comes at the cost of having one kill grant you one magic charge, and when you right click with the magic charge, it will randomly kill one player. Going to assume that's on the enemy team anyway. And alt fire kills do not grant magic charge, so it's at least balanced in that respect. I'm not going to pretend to know how strong this would be in-game, as a minus 90% damage penalty would make getting kills incredibly difficult. And again, at least you have a faster firing speed to compensate for that. And the RNG aspect of randomly just smiting another player like Zeus would be incredibly funny, but incredibly infuriating to fight against. So why did I include this? So I'm going to assume the person who made this doesn't understand that the sandwich heals you for 300 health, but regardless. This is a lunchbox for the heavy that heals you to max HP and gives you full crits for 3 seconds. This comes at the cost of 4 more seconds of eating time. Not sure how to feel about this one. I mean, 4 more seconds of eating time is a very, very long time. However, if you could time this right, this would be perfect for getting out of the gates with, say, an Ubered medic buddy. Overall, good idea, good concept. If it were mini crits, then maybe that would be better, but then again, it's already what the buffalo steak sandwich does. But full-on crits, I'm not too sure, even if that is worth 4 seconds. Generally, I still don't know how I feel about this thing. I'm kind of just blanked. 4 seconds worth of eating. Well, it's not even 4 seconds, it's 4 more seconds. But that for full crits, oh, I don't know. I do not know. It's either weak, incredibly strong, or need a complete rework. I'm going to choose a bit weak. I'm very sorry. I think it's a cool idea, but 3 seconds of crits for like, what's that, like 6, maybe 5 seconds of eating? I'm not too sure. The Homer Hero is a design I'm pretty sure we've all come up with mentally before, but could never quite get it to work. The rockets will follow your mouse as you move around, yet this comes at the cost of a 30% slower projectile speed and 10% damage penalty. Well, the first thing I have to say about this one is that it would have to be run with a shotgun to be anywhere remotely close to viable. Also, a random crit with this thing would be terrifying. Imagine a random crit moving slower, yet slowly moving towards you no matter how far you move away. That would be absolutely terrifying. But a rocket launcher is meant to be good at hitting the guy over there, and if the guy moves over there, that's generally how you counter the rocket launcher. However, I don't really know if this translates in terms of mouse control. So again, another one I don't know how I feel about. I'm going to put it a bit too weak. Purely because the idea of a rocket launcher, straightforward, bang, fast, it's the fast food of guns. Straight damage, hit the guy with their explosion, and having them move around would be incredibly unfun to fight against, and the 30% slower projectile speed would also be insufferable to deal with on the soldier's end. Unfun for everyone. So this next design here gives me PTSD flashbacks for how Mei originally used to work in Overwatch 1. Although maybe it's close to how she works in Overwatch 2, except I don't play Overwatch 2, I used to play Overwatch 1 because that was a good fun game. Overwatch 2 is a terrible game. Anyway, no afterburn and a 30% damage penalty comes at the cost of having a 30% slower movement speed applied to targets. I don't really know how I feel about this one. First thoughts is that it's going to be incredibly weak and incredibly unfun to fight against. I guess the idea is, because it has a damage penalty, your target will be moving slower, therefore you can hit them more. Yet, I almost feel like a firing speed, if that makes sense. That kind of penalty would have made more sense for this. So, the third one in a row of which I do not like the cut of the jib. I don't know how to feel about this one, purely because, well, it's going to be unfun to fight against, it's going to be unfun to use. I think need of complete rework. Now would be a good time to address that in the previous episode of this, I had made a couple of mistakes in regards to what weapons were for what classes, and I did make a pinned comment, but obviously no one reads pinned comments. But long story short, my choices did not change. Both of the weapons I mistook for different classes were both terrible, and they were both need of complete reworks. However, one criticism that applies from that video to this one is, when submitting a weapon guys, please make sure I can actually tell which class it's for. As you see, the Nevilish Companion here sounds and looks like a medic weapon, yet it's not listed as the such. As default pistol rules apply, we're going to assume this is for the Scout and the Engineer, and essentially this is a 50% damage bonus, but a minus 50% firing speed. That alone would have been enough to rank it, however it also has a meter that can fill, and when it's filled you get mini crits for 10 seconds at the cost of 25 health. Now I personally would have rather this been at the cost of half your health, and say maybe you couldn't get it back while under the effects. Yet, as it stands, this seems incredibly strong as, well, we all know how much damage a pistol can really deal, even with a slower firing speed. So, I'm sorry, the Nevilish Companion is a bit too good, so, well, I'm probably going to put it in too strong, actually. It's a good idea, but then again, it needs complete rework. Well, if you made it this far into the video, thank you very much, it genuinely means a lot to me. If you made it this far into the video, comment down below something to do with how I should be ashamed of what I did to that group of orphans, and how they deserve to live, but, you know, just to confuse everyone else. Wow, that's probably a bit graphic. Anyway. The PD Air Blast is an original idea that I absolutely love the sight of. When attached to a sentry, that sentry gets an air blast mechanic, which it will reflect oncoming projectiles. This comes at the cost of sentries costing an extra 70 metal to build, meaning they will require 200 metal to build. And as an extra note, this is a permanent effect no matter whether you're using this thing or not, as long as you're carrying it you have this effect. Sentries now cost 300 metal to get to the next level. They cost a whopping 50% more metal to heal and restore ammo. And the Air Blast uses 25% of the sentry's max ammo, going to assume that's both rockets and bullets. Where on earth do I start with this thing? Well, I first have to say, as an original concept, this is fantastic. However, how this would play out in the game, I could not tell you. So, it seems to be on a solo sentry locking down a point. You know, this would be quite baitable. The soldier and demo both have 4 shots in the normal clip, and you can essentially just bait it out until it's done. Yet, whether this applies to mini-sentries as well is also an interesting cause. I assume it would, and therefore it would be even stronger than applying it to a level 3. And those passives are just so responsibly exhaustive. I really don't know how to feel about this thing. It's such a cool idea, yet I think this would be an absolutely terrible thing to add into the game. Oh, heavens, I don't know where to put this thing. I think complete rework is the only possible place we could put it in. It's a fantastically unique idea that I love the sight of, yet we can't add this to the game. I'm 100% sure of that. Also guys, you could sponsor Crumble for just £1 a week. Do you guys like eggs? I really like eggs. I like to scramble them personally. Best tip I could possibly give for scrambled eggs: insanely high heat, constantly stir them, never let them simmer. Also add black pepper. And yes, I'm fully aware no one is watching the video at this point, so I can literally just talk about whatever I want. Anyway, the Sapper Buster here is a concept that relies upon the fact that we all, at some point, have tried to shoot a rescue ranger bolt at our sentry to try clear it of a sapper. So your sentry has an extra 34 health, which is very random, and bolts that shot at sappers can remove them. A 10% faster firing speed and a 20% damage increase towards enemy buildings, always nice touches. And your dispensers and teleporters get an extra 50 health, which is a whopping number. But now the downsides. Sappers do 40 DPS on buildings, which is a lot more than they normally do. One sapper takes 3 bolts to remove, and sentries take 1 second longer to turn. I assume this means that their tracking speed is lowered, and only wrenchers can repair buildings. This means that if you have a friendly rescue ranger engineer, he would not be able to heal your buildings. What a woman. Okay, well, let's break this thing down. So, I think the idea of a gun removing sappers from the engineer's buildings is a fantastic idea. However, this thing seems to overcompensate way too much for that. A simple idea would just have the bolt take 3 hits to remove a sapper in exchange for, less damage against players. Like, much less damage against players. That makes more sense to me. And give the bolts a certain effective range in that if you're out of the range, or even if you're too close, it can't remove the sapper. Yet, I don't think the overtuning of the Sapper Buster here is the correct way to go about this. Brilliant concepts and form as always. However, I just don't awfully know if it's a bit too strong or a bit too weak. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm going to put it in need of complete rework. And it might look like I've done it a lot today. However, just as is, I don't think it's awfully viable. The Dallas doohickey here is a difficult pickle to tickle. So dispensers are essentially replaced with these tiny little mini dispensers that you can put down that spawn health and ammo packs instead, so it's not a constant stream of ammunition. 50 metal placement, 100 to upgrade to level 2, 200 to upgrade to level 3. And each level gives out different size health kits and ammo packs. Now, the funny thing is, this thing is actually really weak at levels 1 and pretty good at level 2, but at level 3 it's just downright busted. Spawning full ammo packs and health packs every couple of seconds or so, and the fact that you can have 2 of these placed in the same area is a terrible idea. But I would never not say I'd be remiss if I didn't like the idea of this. I really like the idea of just the dispenser. Okay, it's 3 in the morning, please, I'd like a break. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that I really like the idea of this. Just like the idea of a dispenser being able to spawn ammo packs every few... Spawn! Okay, well, I like the idea of this thing, but just in reality, the third level is just far too strong, and, the beginning level is just not strong enough. Need a complete rework. Also, guys, you can sponsor Sage for just... Oh, it doesn't actually say. What do you guys think about the concept of respect? Should it be earned, or should everybody have it once, and then it's up to them to decide whether they get to keep it? Because, nowadays there are so many different groups on the internet who dye their hair and scream about how they deserve your respect. And I've always thought, well, you haven't really earned it. But then I once had a teacher, he was essentially like a principal, and he was being interviewed by the students, which I volunteered to take part in. And I talked to him about respect, and he threw off my ideas completely. He said everybody should be given your respect, but it's up to them whether they keep it or not. So, no matter who they are, for the first time you meet them, you should give them your respect, and yet whether they decide to keep it or not is entirely up to them. And that threw off my entire philosophy on respect for the longest time, and I'm still pondering it to this day. Regardless, I'm still questioning it myself, so I'd like to know what everyone else thinks. Do you think everyone should be given your respect immediately, yet it's up to them whether they decide to keep it? Or do you think respect should be earned in the first place? Please let me know down below. I'd really like an answer to this. Anyway, the last weapon we're going to talk about today is the Old Caster. At the cost of having a slower deploy speed, no scope, and no random critical hits, this thing has 50% base damage, 20% firing speed, and pressing mouse 3 will equip a bayonet for close quarters combat. How on earth this would work in game, I have no clue. But I'm going to assume what this means is you can shoot the weapon normally, yet pressing mouse 3 will do a melee attack, but with, your primary weapon, so you essentially don't have to switch to your melee whatsoever. I guess the downside to this could be that you could remove the melee weapon entirely on Sniper, but then again, this would just be a direct upgrade as you haven't wanted to switch, you wouldn't have to switch in the first place. It feels mechanically complex, yet so simple, yet at the same time so weak, yet so strong. So, I really don't know how to feel about this one. The Old Caster, I mean, it's pretty similar to the hunting rifle we had earlier, but I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know. Well, I mean, 50% base damage under cost of no scope. Ooh, I think we'll just throw it into need of rework. Basically, if it's too strong, it's one tier below needed complete rework. Or if it needs buffs, it's one tier above needed complete rework. That's essentially how it works. And this thing, it's not too strong, it's not too weak, it just needs to be mechanically reworked. And that is going to do it for this one. Please, I beg you, let me go. I don't know how many weapons this video has contained, but it's contained a lot. In future, I will try to shorten my comments on all of them. But you see, this is ranking and reviewing, so I really like to give my honest opinions on how I think they'd not only work in-game, but on paper as well. So I don't really want to shorten my opinions on these weapons. But then again, I think the videos will just have to get longer and longer. I'm so grateful there's even a tiny community of people who actually care enough to submit their ideas for me to rank them on video. And, they get something out of it as well. They get the, look, Mum, I appeared in the YouTube video kind of idea. But but I just wanted to say thank you all. I know it sounds like I get quite grumpy about this series on and off camera, but I promise you I'm not. I promise I really do like the interaction. I just never realised how out of hand it would get. But I think longer videos and shorter explanations are the way to go, less rambling, all that kind of stuff. And I hope you're looking forward to that in the future, because there is going to be no shortage of these videos. I might have to up them to 2 a week. Currently I've been doing 1 a week. But I've been sitting here since like 11:30 or something. It's currently now 3 in the morning. So I think I'll be able to get this one up in a couple of minutes. Well, tell you what, I've got to go back. I've got to add all the video footage. How I do, I record all the audio first. I don't script because I'm incredibly good at just thinking on the spot. I record the audio, then I record the footage of me ranking the weapon, and then I add in the video afterwards. So I've got to do all that. Thank you very much, everyone. I've got a Monster Energy here. Sorry, no, I'm not going to apologise for anything random I said in this video, but please let me know what you think about respect down below. I'd like to have an actual answer to that one. Anyway, thank you very much, lads. I'll see you later down a sunny road. Cheers.